It's 7 o'clock, which means it's time for Model Monday here at the Milwaukee Makerspace. We're going to go ahead and get started with our project. I should have up the right screen here. Our project, which is part 2, the last part of our Flugtag wing design progress here. So if I zoom out, you can see the beginnings of our wing. This is what we've got so far, where we ended up last week, and this week we're going to kind of finish up making the second spar here. We'll make a wing covering, and then hopefully we'll have time to make the other half of this wing, because we've only got half of it drawn. And then next week we'll start a new project. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm gonna grab my Flugtag from class project here, and we're going to go ahead and just get started. So, sorry, did we have a question? All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Like I said, we're going to start by drawing the second spar, the rear spar for our segment or our wing section here. And we'll do that the same way we drew our first part. So if you remember, we've got our wing component here. So I'm going to go ahead and make my wing component my active component. That way any sketches or bodies that I make will end up inside of this wing component here. I'm going to spin down and look inside of my canvases folder. I'm sorry. Well, I don't have I thought for sure I'd have a construction folder, but I do not. So we're going to go ahead and make the second spar the same way we made our first spar. So our first spar we just made as a drawing on one of these surfaces here, and we'll do the same thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my front spar. And to create a new sketch, I'm going to go ahead and click on Create, and then Create Sketch. I'm going to hover over, so I'm going to choose one of these that doesn't have an origin floating right over it. There we go. If I zoom in a little bit, my origin was kind of covering the surface that I wanted to click on, so I had to kind of zoom in so I could see the surface more clearly. And if I choose that surface to draw on, then it's going to spin me around so I'm looking down or kind of looking at that surface. Now, I can't really see that surface because it's behind all of these bodies. So what I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to turn off the visibility on my front spar. And if I turn off the visibility on my front spar, it's going to be a little bit easier to draw here temporarily. And I'm going to kind of spin around so I'm looking at this a little bit more three-dimensionally. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take some of the existing geometry that exists here on our airfoil and project it over onto this drawing surface that we're drawing on right now. And I can do that with a command inside of our Create menu. If we scroll down to Project Include, and then that little sub-menu that pops up, we're going to choose the Intersect command. And one of the great things about Fusion 360 here is it's got lots of tooltips. So if you're not sure how to use a tool, these tooltips, if you just stop moving your mouse, it'll just show you, hey, it projects the points, model edges. Oh, I clicked before I could finish reading.
Face, is that right? On the back?
I'm actually going to select the entire body. So I'll scroll over to this intersect option, and then the default selection filter in this intersect window here is set to specified entities. But if I change that to bodies, now I can project the geometry from this entire body all at the same time. So it'll bring over all the edges and points where this three-dimensional shape intersects with this imaginary sheet of paper, if that makes sense. So if I choose that body there as my geometry, and I say OK, now I have all that geometry from that first, from my airfoil over there. I just need to get a little bit more geometry here. So I already have this front spar that extends out a certain length near the middle of my craft, and then I guess it doesn't really extend out near the end of my craft, but I can use that existing geometry to project over kind of the end points of what will be my rectangle. And I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to use that project command again. So from create, I'm going to come down to project, and then instead of intersect, we're just going to choose this project option. So if I choose this project option here, what I want to project are the ends of my wing spar here. So I've got a wing spar, the center of my wing will be right here after we mirror this over later. So if I choose one of these edges here, then it takes and projects that line back. And if I zoom out and zoom in over here on my other side, I've got another edge of my wing spar. I guess that's kind of superfluous because it's right up on the edge of our wing here, so that's not really a necessary projection point, but it'll be handy. We do need to have some sort of end. So whether you project
So you do that on each side?
Yeah, on each side. And once we've done that on each side, I'll click OK, and then I'll kind of show you if I turn off my bodies. So I just kind of turned off the visibility on my bodies, and now we can see just the projected geometry here that I've created. So this section here was where the airfoil existed that I projected over, and then this is one end of my spar, and that's going to be the other end of my spar there. So now I just need to add a little bit more here. So I just need to draw a rectangle that will encompass, that will be the same width as my spar height at this location and the right length. And I think I'm going to do this all using constraints. So, because I don't know how long this is, and I don't really know how wide this is. I guess I could measure, but it's easier to do this using constraints. So I'm going to grab from my create menu, I'm going to come and grab this 2-point rectangle option. And
how did you get to that drawing?
So to get to seeing this drawing, I just turned off the visibility on my bodies folder. So it's a little bit difficult to see what's going on there. So I just turned off the little eyeball next to my bodies folder there.
Okay.
And then I can just see my sketch. So now if we come up to the create menu and we choose the rectangle option and come over to 2-point rectangle. Now I'm going to just do a really bad job of this because, like I said, I'm going to get it all constrained into place, but eventually I want my rectangle to be the same height as my spar and the same width as my front spar here. But I'm just going to do a really bad job of it right now and make my rectangle like that. So I did not specify any height or width. I just clicked and placed the first point of my rectangle and then clicked and placed the second point of my rectangle. Normally I would encourage people to type dimensions in, but I think this is one of those few occasions where you would constrain your sketch with dimensions, but here we're constraining it with existing geometry. Does that make sense? Yeah? So now we can use our constraints menu here, and I think I can get away with just using my horizontal, vertical, or coincident. That will also work. I'll show you how to use both. So the horizontal, vertical constraint will constrain a single line or 2 points to lie on either the vertical or horizontal axis, whichever is the closest alignment. So if I choose this horizontal, vertical constraint, I can zoom in here and I can say, hey, take this line and I'll make it straight horizontal or straight vertical. Oh, it actually doesn't work. Coincident is what I got to go with. I thought for sure I could use horizontal, vertical, but not really. So I'll take my coincident constraint and I'll click on my line at the top here, and I'll click on one of the points at the top of my spar, and it'll go ahead and move that downwards. And you can see now that that is constrained in a direction, it turned black. So now it's kind of like locked in place. I've still got my constraint tool handy here, so I can just keep using it. So I can do that with the bottom of my line too. I can click on the bottom of my wing spar and then click on one of the bottom points that I projected over, and that will constrain that lower edge. And I'll do the same thing with the side here. I'll click on the point that represents the top left-hand corner of that rectangle, and then I'll click on the line that I projected over. This is the inside line of my wing. And now I'll zoom out and I'll zoom in to the other side and just do that one last time. So I'll click on the point, and then I'll come over here and I'll click on the line. And now my rectangle is now fully constrained here. So, you know, I talked a little bit about liking to have a bunch of black lines out on my drawing because it means everything is kind of locked in place and fully constrained, which is very unlike the airfoil that we designed. But this is more like what we want a drawing to look like here. Nice and fully constrained, and lots of black lines is good. Alright, if I go ahead and click Finish Sketch now, before I turn on my bodies, I'm going to extrude out this rectangle that I have made here. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Extrude option, and I'm going to extrude out all of, I'm going to select each one of the profiles of my wing spar here, and I'm going to type in a dimension of 2 inches. And I do this because I'd like to illustrate something, is that if you remember, we turned off, you don't see anything appearing in front of you here, right? And that is because we turned off the visibility on our bodies folder. So we're making a body and we have the body's visibility turns off. This is something that I do quite often, and then I go, oh, it's not working. Oh wait, right. I gotta turn on that visibility of that bodies folder, and then I can see all the things within it. The default operation that it is choosing for me, the very bottom here, is defaulting to cut. And that's because, let's see, if I were to turn off all of these airfoils, turn off the visibility of them, now it's going to default to new body here. So the way this works is when you're extruding something or revolving something, when you're creating a body of any kind, and that body will intersect another body that you've already made, it will let you choose an operation to do on how those bodies interact with each other. So you can choose to cut away the body that exists with the thing that you're currently doing. That's called a Boolean operation. So when you're cutting away from it, or you can choose, like I could just make this an intersection between the two bodies. So, or the 7 bodies in this case, 8. So we've got the intersection between the airfoils and the current thing I'm extruding, which are just these little teeny bits here. Or what we actually want to do is we want to make it a new body. We'll worry about cutting out the notches in the next step. So I just want to make this a brand new body and not join it or cut away or do anything like that. So I'm going to choose this new body option. I've got my distance set in, that's of 2 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and say oakley dokley. Alright, so we have our spar made, our rear spar. However, it does not have the appropriate notches so it will fit into our airfoil. So if I turn off my front airfoil, my first airfoil there, you can see in the front spar we've got these little notches cut in, and that is because we've got matching notches in our airfoil already, right? So we can kind of construct this in a way that it'll be fairly easy. To add those notches into the rear spar, I believe we're going to use the same command. So from the modify menu, counterintuitively, we're going to use the combine command. So like just previously, I mentioned that there are several different operations that you can do when 2 bodies are intersecting with each other. The target body in this case is the thing that we want to do the cutting from. And I guess I have to select a tool before it'll let me pick an operation here. This is a new window. There used to be a drop down here in the combine menu, just like in the extrude command. This is new. This is a recent update. So the tool bodies are the things that are going to be doing the cutting. The default operation here is join because it's the combine command. That makes sense. But you can also use this as the cut command if you want to. So you can use one body to cut away from another body. So, and you can have more than one tool. So we've got one target, which is our wings bar, and we're going to have more than one tool here. So I can go through and click on all of them individually here in my drawing view, or over here in my bodies folder of my browser, I can click on the first one in the list and hold down the shift key and click on the last one in the list, and then I'll get all of my airfoils selected there without having to click 8 times. It's handy if you got like 30 things that you're trying to subtract away. A key that we want to do here, a key that we want to point out is we want to keep our tools after we've done this operation. So if I choose this keep tools checkbox, it will here, I can do it wrong. I'll do it wrong. If you don't have that checkbox checked, all of my airfoils have disappeared. In which case you should immediately panic and start from scratch. Just start out now. So it's the lovely thing about Fusion 360 is, you know, everything is parametric. So down here in the bottom in our timeline, if I accidentally go, oh, all my airfoils are gone, I can right-click on that and say Edit Feature. And now I kind of go back in time to when I was doing this operation, right? And I can say, oh, forgot to click that little Keep Tools checkbox there. So now when I say OK, Now it keeps all my tools. But we can see if I turn off that airfoil, now I've got that nice little notch. That same notch is notched into the back there. Alright, so we've got our airfoils drawn here. We've got our spars. I've got one body to name here. This is our rear spar. And then just as housekeeping to do here, I'm going to go ahead and name this sketch. I probably should have been better at naming this as I was going. You people who are long-time joiners here will know that I like to name my bodies and my sketches. I pretty much name almost everything. Just as a kind of tangent, you can name the things down here in your timeline. So if you really want to get crazy and name things, I can go ahead and choose. So right now, this combine is just called combine 2, but I can choose to rename that as rear spar notches. This is super handy if you need to share a drawing with somebody else, right? And they need to change something about your drawing, and they need to go, oh yeah, I need to change the thickness that the rear spar is, and I can do that if I know which of these icons I need to click on. So if you change like where I made that rear spar, this is my rear spar extrusion. Now they can go down here and they just hover over that and they go, oh, there's where they made their rear spar extrusion. I'm glad that Carl named that for me. What a well-organized person he is. And a model example for everybody in their Fusion 360 use. Just crickets. All right, cool. So, appreciate you. All right. The next thing we need to do here is we need some sort of wing covering. And to make our wing covering, I think I'm going to have us leave the comfort and relative peace of our solid working environment up here at the top. And we're going to step into the crazy tangerine tooled environment of our surface workspace here. A surface is fundamentally different than a solid body. Surfaces, they still call surfaces bodies, but so far the things that we have drawn so far are objects that have mass, I would say. They have like a length and a width and a height. It's like a block or a brick that we've made. A surface has a height and a width for sure, but not necessarily a thickness. So a surface you can imagine as just like a sheet of paper as a surface, I guess you could say. And we're going to draw our wing out of a sheet of paper. So the surfaces don't really have any thickness, but you can give them thickness later. We'll just kind of go ahead and jump into this and give it a try. So I'm going to turn on my airfoil sketch. And I'm going to choose to hide all of my bodies again, because they're just kind of in the way at this point. So normally, when we're in the solid environment, we can click on. That's interesting. I don't want to let me. Do I have to turn my bodies folder on in order for it to be visible? If I choose to extrude, yeah. So it'll let me highlight like an area that is surrounded by lines, like a fully enclosed shape. In the surface workspace, we highlight the lines and not the bodies. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my bodies folder here again. So instead of the bodies, I'm going to pick on both of the, that's interesting. I haven't chosen Extrude yet. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create, and then I'm going to choose the Extrude here from the surface area. Make sure you got an orange tangerine extrude tool here because we're in the surface area. And now, there we go. Now it'll let me pick that outline that represents the outer edge of my airfoil. And if I expand that in, again, we will see nothing because I've turned off my bodies, the visibility on my bodies. So I'll go ahead and turn that back on. And I'll just kind of extrude out this little surface here. So you can see, kind of get what I'm saying. It looks like this surface has some sort of thickness, but I assure you it is a completely zero-dimensional thing. It's like showing you that it has dimension, but it really doesn't have any thickness. That's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around. It's like, hey, hands are crazy, man. Crazy. All right, so I'm going to choose to extrude this surface with an option that I don't think some of you have seen yet. So from in our extrude menu or window here, there is a direction option. And normally one side is a great thing to choose. But in our case, we actually want to go out two sides in different directions. So symmetric would go out in either side the same amount, the same distance. But if I choose two sides, then it gives me two arrows. And I can drag out each arrow a different amount. I can also, instead of specifying a distance for each side, so here for side 1, instead of distance, I can say, hey, I want to go to an object. And if I change that to an object, and then I choose as the object that I want to go to the end of my wings bar, it'll extrude out all the way to the end of that wings bar there. And if I rotate around and I choose this other side 2, I'm going to change that to object as well. And now I'll zoom in here so I can click on the other side of my wings bar there. Now I've got a nice little sheathing there, and new body is indeed what we want to do here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Are you guys following me at home? How you guys doing?
How did all of the rivets end up in there?
Mike, if you want to draw rivets, we will 100% draw rivets.
You extruded, and all of a sudden they were there.
Right. Oh yeah, it does kind of look like rivets, but really, you know, it's a weird artifact. So
Okay.
yeah, Mike was just kind of pointing out, if I zoom out, you know, there's some weird like dotted lines going on there, right? And it's because this surface has no thickness. That the outside of this surface, or what we see as the outside of this surface, the gray part, is at exactly the same place as that corner. So it's showing the line that technically exists at that point. Also, you know, like if you have a very thin surface, which we're about to have, we'll probably still be able to see through our piece until you zoom in. Like when you back up, the rendering of Fusion, I don't know, it just does a different job of it. It doesn't try as hard than as when you get closer. And you know, that's why you see these lines too, is that these lines exist on the same place on this surface. The inside and outside really exist at the same place because it has 0 dimension. Anyway, so it's like I said, it's a mind-blown kind of thing. So the next thing that we want to do here is we want to give our surface a name. Let's go ahead and name it. This is our, I don't know, wing covering. I'm going to call it my wing covering surface, because from this body, this surface body, I'm going to actually create a thick, real body here. Maybe something I'll just mention briefly is it doesn't really make a whole lot of a difference. Well, it kind of does. This surface has a gray side and a yellow side. The gray side is the outside of that surface, and the yellow side is the inside. If you import this into some other software and you start doing stuff with it, you'll find that that makes a difference. Also, for this next step, which we're going to choose here, that will make a difference, we're going to choose this thicken command. But if for some reason you have the yellow part, or the yellow surface for your wing is on the outside here, there is an option that you'll want to find called reverse normal. So if you're ever working with surfaces, or if your surface here for some reason is inside out, you can choose from the modify menu this reverse normal, and it will flip that surface. Again, this is what it would look like if it was inside out. So I'm just going to go ahead and, is that a reverse normal feature? It is a reverse normal feature, so I'm just going to delete this feature from my timeline here, because gray is what you want on the outside. And that makes a difference, because when you choose something like the thicken command, which we're going to do right now, if we choose create and then thicken, now I'm going to choose not to pick the item that I want to thicken, or the face that I want to thicken, by clicking on my drawing environment, because this is actually more than one face. It's much easier to click on the surface that you want to click on by clicking on the surface in the bodies folder in your browser. So if I choose here out of my drawing view, you can see I've really only gotten half of it, and so I've only clicked on the top, I haven't clicked on the bottom, and then I have to click on two faces, whereas here I just need to click on one body, one surface body, and now the whole thing is highlighted there.
What was that option again?
That is, in the create menu, there's a thicken command.
Yeah, and then how do you get all the bodies at once, all the faces at once?
So instead of choosing it from the drawing environment, if you click on and highlight the body in your bodies folder, so here's my bodies folder in my browser, if I just choose it that way, then it should highlight the whole thing. And thank you for the question. All right, so now, similar to, I guess, a lot of commands, the extrude command, we need to give some sort of thickness here. A wing covering is super thin. So, like, I don't know, what do you think, Mike? 5 thousandths?
10 thousandths.
10 thousandths?
Excuse me.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Mike's recommendation of 10 thousandths, which is 0.001. Or is that 100 thousandths? That's 10 thousandths, right?
0.01 would be 10,000.
0.01. Okay, cool. Thank you. So 0.01, so real thin body, but a body nonetheless. And just for reference, you could make this as thick as you want to. So if you happen to have a weird curvy shape and you want to make make it, this is how I would recommend doing it, is starting with the surface and then thicken. So just because there may or may not be somebody in here in class who could use that particular knowledge. No, you're good. All right, cool. So new body, and here is where that normal side, that gray and that yellow side, becomes important, because we are choosing. I guess you're not choosing. You're choosing one side, but I'm gonna make it 1 inch. If it were inside out, I bet it would go the other way. And I'm just going to test that. So I'm going to click on OK here. And then just as a test, I'm going to go back in time, in my timeline. And I'm going to find that reverse normal option. And again, you guys don't need to do this. I just want to illustrate. So if my body is inside out, and then I do my thicken, then it thickens it in the wrong direction. So having that normal in the right way, does make a difference. All right, so I'm just going to do undo a couple of times, and then come into the present, and then 1/10,000ths. That much.
1,000?
That's 1,000.
I thought you were putting in 10,000.
So 0.01. Is that what we're thinking?
0.01. It's 10,000.
Yes.
0.01. Okay, cool. 10,000ths. All right, and new body. And I'm gonna say okay. So I'm almost done here. We just have a little bit of cleanup to do. So our front spar sticks out over our wing surface, and that ain't cool. So we're gonna need to cut away that little corner of our wing surface here. I mean, I guess the real way to do this, because it would be to just extrude this bit down. I guess if we were actually trying to make this wing, the way to go would be to just extrude this down a little bit so it just does not protrude over our surface, because the way I'm going to show you will make a very difficult to manufacture wing. But we don't got to make these, so we can make them hard to make.
Okay.
And let the engineers yell at us. Go ahead, Mike.
Carl, couldn't you jump to the surface menu, choose the profile of your airfoil, extrude, and choose cut from the options?
Yeah, definitely. Similarly, alternatively, you don't need to extrude out a new surface because we already have one. So, and that's the suggestion that I was going to make here. So if we switch back over to our solid working space here, there is an option called split body. Normally, splitting a body involves using a construction plane of some sort. At least in the past, we've used like a construction plane in order to split a body in two. But you can also use a surface to split a body in two. So the body that we're going to split here is the front spar. So I'm just going to choose it from the bodies folder in my browser, this front spar. Another good reason to name things is because, like, oh, I just have to read and then I can click on it. Our splitting tool is going to be this wing surface here. So if I choose that as my splitting tool, it kind of extends it out a little bit in each direction. You can see these red lines or red surfaces extending out there. And it's doing that because I'm telling it to extend the splitting tools. I think that's a good practice, but it's not necessary, I guess. But I'm going to do it in this case. And I'm going to say OK. And now it doesn't look like much has changed. However, if I look carefully, I have two bodies that are called front spar over in my bodies folder. and I can just turn off the visibility on that one, and you can see that it took down our corner. I almost never delete things in Fusion 360. It causes problems in the timeline. If you delete something and maybe something that you've done depends on that body being there, like if I had created a sketch on this surface and then I delete that so it doesn't exist, like that surface no longer existed for my sketch to live on, and you know, then Marty McFly's hand starts disappearing. So the method that I would always go with in this case, like I don't ever need to see this ever again, is just clutter. So the method that I would always go with for getting rid of a body would be to right click on it and choose the remove option. So if I choose that remove option, what it does is it sticks another icon down in my timeline, and that now I can go back in time. So it's not there right now, but if I really needed that, I could go back in time to where it existed, or I could delete that remove, which sounds weird. I could delete the remove, and then that body would disappear. So if at some point in the future I'm like, oh, I really wish I had that surface to draw something on, I could remove the remove or delete the remove. But oh boy, look out, holy cow, panic. All right, cool. So we don't need our wing covering surface anymore. We do need our wing covering. I'm going to go ahead and name that body my wing covering, or you could call it, it's my, whatever you're covering your wing with, like mono coat or ultra coat or whatever kind of coat, winter coat. Cool. So there's our wing, our nice sturdy wing here. With the last couple of minutes here in class, I kind of want to talk about some new stuff that I've been learning. So, let's go ahead and mirror this wing, because we've only got half a plane right now. So I'm gonna close my bodies folder, I'm gonna close my sketches folder, and I'm gonna go back to making my Flugtag main document component my active component. So now I'm kind of outside of my wing component here, and I'm doing that because I want to make a mirror of this wing component. So we've got half of it, and we can make the other half. If I choose from the create menu, if I come up to this mirror option, now the mirror type that I want to make is not of a face or a body or a feature, it's of a component. So I'm going to choose that component as my type. I'm going to pick the component that is my wing in my browser over here. And now as the plane that I'm going to mirror that across, I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to choose one of the sides of my wings bar. Like that front wings bar there, right in the middle, or what I imagine as the middle. And then it goes ahead and it duplicates that over there. So now we got a wing there. Now something else that I'll mention is we have been going through this kind of Flugtag design process, designing a wing on Wednesdays, because we're going to do this competition that's coming to Milwaukee, right? So one of the things that people have said is like, oh, if you have a wing that's at an angle like this, then it's a little bit more easy to handle. It flies a little bit easier for whatever reason, because aerodynamically, if it's tilted off in one direction, then this wing is going to get more lift than this wing over here, so it's going to kind of naturally make it stabilize. So something we could do here is I'm going to make a mirror plane that's at a slight angle to this plane here. So if I, from the construct menu, if I choose this plane at an angle option, I'm going to pick the bottom edge of my wing spar here as the plane that I'm going to make, as the line that I'm going to make an angle from, and I'm just going to tilt it. I guess that would be 10 degrees, but I really only want to tilt it like 5 degrees. So I'm going to tilt it off to 95 degrees there and say enter. And now, if I choose my mirror command, I'll come up and say create, and then mirror. I'll choose the wing component, and I'll choose that mirror plane, which is that angled plane that I just picked, and say OK. Now I've got a nice, I think they call that a dihedral, is that right? Now I've got a nice dihedral on my wing surface here. The other thing that I've been learning about here in Fusion as I go down this plane making rabbit hole is sometimes it's really handy to know how much things weigh. Well, what's the mass of a thing? And Fusion can help you with that. So we have in the past chosen appearances. So from the modify menu, you can come down to this appearance option. And I think this is really handy for helping keeping things visually organized. So if our wing is made out of clear plastic, it's like transparent, and I'm just going to go ahead and call it acrylic. It's just visually for the look here. It's interesting that it's not showing through. It should be becoming transparent, but I'm just curious if... Oh yeah, that's kind of fun. So here, let me do it to the other side, and you can see why I went. How come that's different? So I dragged out this appearance over this body here, which is my monocoat body, on this side of the wing. This is our mirrored side. And apparently when I mirrored it over, it turned back on the visibility of my wing covering surface. So if I just turn off the visibility of my wing covering surface, I don't know why it turned that back on when I mirrored it, but I guess it was just showing me that it mirrored even things that I wasn't looking at. So that's kind of handy. So we know we can do this. We can change the appearance of things, but you can also give your bodies a physical material. So Fusion knows how big this is, how big your objects are, how much volume they take up. So if you come down here from the modify menu, instead of appearance, you choose physical material. Now we've got a whole slew of actual materials that you can apply to this body here. So for example, this airfoil over on this side, let's say you are making a much smaller plane and you are making it out of birch, which is maybe a fine wood to make a plane airfoil out of. So if I just drag over this birch on top of this, it applies that material to the body there. And here I can actually double click on this too and find out information. Did I double click on it there? No, up here. So I double click on the physical material. So this is the physical materials that are in this design. If I double click on birch, it says it'll give me the exact ounce mass per cubic inch of that birch. And if you wanted to, you could you could change this. So if you got some birch and you weighed it, this is my custom special wood. You can name it something there. I'm going to say done here. So now that's your custom special wood, and you weighed it. Turns out your birch is amazing, and it's a whole 0.1 ounces per cubic inch less heavy than it will. So you can make custom materials, which is nice. I can also like right click on this and I can say duplicate, and now I've got another material over here. So you know, if I've got, this isn't birch now, this is maybe this is my, what do they call that pink foam? It's expanded polyester or something or other. We'll just call it pink foam. Pink insulation. And then you go out to the internet and you find out how much pink insulation weighs per cubic inch, and you enter that in here. Let's say it's light. It's pretty light. It's called 0.05. And I'm going to put that on a different body. So here's my pink insulation. Something you'll notice, they don't look different. So the only way to have things look different that actually are a different physical material is by changing their appearance. So we do have to go back to that appearance option and find like here's the, I don't even think birch is an option here, but you know, call it oak, so hey, it's just something wood. We got in the right family, maybe not in the right ballpark, but definitely in the right family. And then let's just go with paint. No, let's go with plastic. And I can make a pink plastic. So I'm just going to drag that plastic out onto this other one. And now if I double click on it up here in this design option, now I can find myself a nice color for my pink insulation foam and say done. Now it's just the appearance, so it doesn't affect the physical material at all. But if I want to find that information, so if I want to go, hey, how much different is in weight is this birch airfoil? If I right click on the body in the bodies folder, I can say properties. And now it will tell me how much that body weighs. That's 132 ounces. And then this pink one, the pink insulation foam, if you were to go out and actually find out how much pink insulation foam weighs per cubic inch, you can see that that one is much lighter. It's only 33 ounces. So really handy to be able to figure out how much things weigh. Here there's also like a volume here. So here there's 674 cubic inches of volume there. So that's handy if you're like, if you need to make a mold of something and you want to figure out how much material is going to take to fill your mold, then you can find out the volume of your object here. I think there is an option if I choose physical material. There's also gases here and liquid. So here's water. If I make this airfoil out of water, which I guess would be ice because it's in a solid form, so let's just assume that this airfoil is made of ice, and I say properties. I thought it gave me like liters when I chose a liquid, but I might be wrong. But you could probably, there's probably a way to convert cubic inches into gallons. You just have to ask the right question to the Google, and it will tell you. But if you're making this wing out of ice, it's going to be 384 ounces per airfoil, which I think is almost the same as our wood one. Is that right? Oh no, half as light. Cool. So that's my story. That's it for our making our wing here. Go ahead, Mike.
Another cool thing, sometimes it's nice to know where the center of gravity is, the center of mass. If you jump over, I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, no, walk me through it. This is great.
Okay, pick your body. You want to know where that wing is going to balance. For stresses, jump over to the inspect menu. Click on that. Slither on down to center of mass. Click on that.
And I've got
see
my
a little blob there. Should be right in the middle of the wing. That is your center of mass, your balance point.
Now, it's interesting because it's not in the center of my wing. Because, do you want to guess?
Because of the way you mirrored it and your modifications.
Yeah, because those materials that I gave. So because I gave these things a physical material that have mass and weight, it's changed that balance. So here I'm going to come back to my thing, and here's all of these airfoils. We'll make them out of pink insulation, and all of these airfoils, we'll make them out of pink insulation. I'll close that, and now, there we go. So now our center of mass has gone back to the center of the wing there. And it's kind of above the wing. That's kind of interesting, because of our angle. So cool. And you want on a wing, I think you're trying to get your center of mass to be about 2/3 back from the front edge. I think that's what Alex was telling us before, is like your center of mass should be about 2/3 back. I'm sorry, 1/3 back from your leading edge. So really our center of mass should be a little higher, forward more, and that just is like a balance thing in order to create lift. So you will need to have some sort of weight that exists out forward of this in order to actually generate some lift, so you're not nosediving. Because
Or you can change your hole diameters.
I could change my hole diameters, or you take like a counterweight and stick it out in the front a little bit, and or where you put your person, so the person is going to be underneath or on top or wherever they're sitting on your wing in our Flugtag competition thing. So you just gotta seat them forward of this so they put the center of mass where it needs to be. Yep, that'd work too. Yeah, the length of the wing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that front spar could be thicker. That would change that mass for sure. Cool. So we'll see you guys next week. We're going to start a new project next week. I'm working on that project at home right now, so hopefully there'll be some mechanical things involved with it. So we're going to have some moving parts, and also potentially we might do another electronics project. It's been a couple of weeks since we did an electronics project, so and that's a new area of fun for me, so we might do some more electronics in Fusion. But we'll start from scratch. So if you're new, we'll start by making some sketches and get you up to speed if you're feeling new, or if you're brand new to the Makerspace or to Fusion. Join us next week, Monday at 7 o'clock. And until then, have a great week.